my channel, Log Into Yourself. Today I'm here with Tim Smits from the Netherlands. I hope I spelled your name right, or I pronounced your name right. Tim is the founder of Unpluq, an app that helps you with your digital well-being, with the digital wellness. And welcome to the show. Tim, how are you?
Hey Sasha, yeah, super nice to be here, and yeah, I'm doing great. We launched our iOS app this week, so that's an exciting moment to be finally having the option to share Unpluq on almost all smartphones. Yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, tell us a little bit about Unpluq, because again, my channel is about digital detox, even though I don't like that name. It's about digital health, digital well-being. I guess we all use our devices a lot and maybe too much, and it affects our mental health, our physical health. And when I came across your app, I was really excited. And so I'd love to hear what's your idea behind it, what's the concept, and how does it help people to manage their digital addiction, maybe?
Yeah. So basically, Unpluq is a product and an app that helps you to become more mindful about how you use your phone, and to help you to make more intentional and deliberate choices about when you actually want to open distracting apps such as social media, games, or dating apps. I think we can all recognize that we're opening a lot of these apps that I just mentioned unconsciously without thinking about it, and they end up taking a lot of our time that we most of the times rather would have wanted to spend in a slightly different way. So that's how the idea of Unpluq got born. We wanted to build something that puts a layer of intentional friction between you and your distracting apps to make sure that you're actually aware of the fact that you're opening them instead of mindlessly opening them. So the way that works is that in our app, you install it and you set up a schedule. You select which apps are distracting for you during what times in the week, so you can set them specifically in the weekends or in the weekdays. And if you then want to access them during that period, you have to perform an action that takes time, which helps you to be more mindful about it, and saves you from unintentional usage.
Okay, so intentional usage is what you guys are really focused on. And so tell me about, how did you come up with the idea? Did you have issues yourself, or what inspired you to do work on a product like that?
Yeah, so obviously, now I don't know if it's obvious, but it for sure started from a problem that I experienced myself. I was studying and I got distracted by my smartphone a lot when I actually needed to work on studying. Or, for example, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos when I actually needed to sleep, and this really impacted my sleep quality and quantity. But I also felt it really took me out of the present, the world, made me less present, less mindful. So I noticed this problem with myself and started to ask around students, friends, and looking around, and I saw that this problem was growing, and a lot of people mentioned they have like a love-hate relationship with their smartphone. So yeah, that's basically how the idea got born. Yeah.
Great, that's great. So do you think it's more like, in your research developing the app and the product, do you think it's an issue that's more focused around the younger age group, or do you think everybody has a smartphone, I guess, these days? Does it affect everybody?
Well, in some sense, it affects everybody, right? But I think it affects some generations maybe more than others. Younger generations, they now tend to grow up with a smartphone, and they can't imagine a life without it. I think in older generations, there are still people that know how life was without a
Feels like,
smartphone.
yeah.
So they're also in some sense less dependent on it. um, I think it's a problem for all ages. Definitely people tend to take some time to become aware of that it's a problem for them. Really younger kids are maybe not aware of it yet, for example.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have any in your development? Did you come up or did you find any of the latest statistics? I was wondering if you could share that, how many hours people spend on their phone average and how many times they pick up the phone on average. Is there anything you could share, or what's your experience?
Yeah, so one interesting statistic that I recently found is that average screen time is around 6 hours at the moment. This was, I think, research from late 2022, where the average screen time of a phone was 6 hours. So yeah, I think
And that's only the phone. That doesn't include computer or iPad or tablet or whatnot.
Yeah,
Watching
correct.
TV somewhere on the real TV. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if you yourself found any interesting stats to share there. I definitely noticed that the amount of screen time has been rising consistently. When we started with Unpluq, it was around 4 hours, the average.
Yeah. I think my latest statistic that I had, and I'm currently writing a book on that, as I told you before, and I think the latest I was 352 in the US, but I don't think that's accurate. That must have been from 2019. And I myself developed a method of tracking it, but I'm not only tracking the screen time on the phone, I'm also tracking it for the TV, for the computer, and for the tablet. And when you summarize that, then you kind of feel shocked because it looks like 8 to 10 hours. I mean, of course, I'm working on myself reducing it, but if you work with other people, you realize that they really spend sometimes 12 hours in front of a digital screen, and that's quite frightening.
True. Yeah.
So, okay. So 6 hours, any statistics about how many times people pick up the phone? For me, I looked at my average the last years was around between 35 and 50, but I think that's on the lower end now.
Yeah, I don't have those statistics on the top of my head, but I've seen numbers around 100 today.
Wow.
But also 60. I don't know. The different research, of course, always shows different results. But yeah, if you think about it, it's definitely a lot. 100 times a day.
Yeah. Did you also? I mean, I don't know if that's relevant, but did you look into the dopamine response of like picking up the phone every 15 or 20 minutes? So you guys became aware during the development of your product how it affects actually your neurotransmitters and all of that?
In a way, I definitely looked into that. I've read some interesting books about the psychological effects that are being used by social media products. For example, Hooked by Nir Eyal, or of course, I've watched The Social Dilemma, and here and there I've also read some research. But overall, I don't have. I didn't dive super deep in the brain, the things that
physiology and brain research.
I don't know. Did you do that?
Yeah, I did a little bit of that. I think Douglas Rushkoff, wrote a book called Shallows, What the Internet Does to Your Brain. I think it's pretty impressive because I'm coming from a mindfulness meditation background, and I really appreciate what you do. I think it's amazing. I also think there's even a deeper level of this because actually it changes how we perceive the world, and that we now, in my experience, pre-digest, or the internet pre-digests experiences for us. So we're not making a fresh, natural, I call it somatic experience anymore. And he made this example of like the map is not the territory. So the map, you're living in a map, but you're not really living in the territory to make a fresh experience of being somewhere new and discovering it like with the eyes of a child that's the first time experiencing something. But the map is already telling you what your life and what your experience at a restaurant is going to look like. So you're pre-digesting and pre-anticipating experiences. So that was a very groundbreaking book for me. I will put the link in the bottom description of this interview. But yeah, so I was reading some stuff on that.
Well, that sounds super interesting. I've definitely heard the saying the map is not a territory, and yeah, it can be applied to many different levels.
Yeah. Yep.
I would love to read that book actually, and yeah, it's interesting also that you mentioned mindfulness here, because that's also been one of the reasons why I got into Unplug. Like I mentioned, like I just started to notice that um, my phone was taking me literally out of the present moment and triggering a lot of unconscious behavior. And yeah, I mean, on on one end, you also really see a rise in popularity in mindfulness and meditation, right? And yeah, I think that's also not for nothing. Like you can clearly see that that's something that a lot more people are looking into, because it's becoming more and more important, because our devices are really blocking mindfulness in a way, and we're spending so much time on them.
Well, that's the topic of my entire channel. Log into yourself, right? So we think we're connecting with everybody out there and we're connected, but we're disconnecting from our inner true self, you could say from our heart. And so
Yeah,
what we're losing, I think that's also connected with the problems of mental health in our society. We're really losing to understand who we are, what do we feel in this moment, and we try to augment every experience by going online and finding an answer. I call it the cloud brain, right? We're going online and trying to find a solution to our feelings, to our problems, to our desires and fears, and looking online rather than modulating them inside ourselves and processing them inside ourselves. So I feel like that's a big topic, and it's maybe a very abstract topic for some people, but I think that's the bigger impact of that.
yeah, totally. And like with the rise of the all the chatbots like
Yep.
ChatGPT and Google Bard, you can only see that increasing, right? Because we're even putting more responsibility and tasks and questions to a digital
Machine,
interface,
the machine.
where we're not basically outsourcing our own thinking processes or
Yep.
our own experience and feeling. So yeah, I think it's super important what you're doing, and I fully support it as well.
I
And
love this idea, outsourcing your thinking process. I mean, that's a great concept. You should really take a note of that because that's what we're starting to do. And I think the danger is that we lose what's created by a machine and a bot and what's created by a human being. And I have some connections to Google actually, and I heard, I don't know if that's true, but they're trying to actually work on making sure that the information that's written for search engines and all of that is actually verified and expertise by a human. So I thought they would go the other direction, but I think they realized to a certain extent that this information can be so much fake information. And then of course, we're going back to the idea, what's the truth, right? What's a true experience? Who is a true expert, or was that created by a machine? So maybe the second iteration of your app will have something about that in there.
yeah,
But let's go back. So you guys decided to put a barrier into the usage, right? So you set your own barrier. You tell yourself, okay, between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m., I don't want to go on social media, and I can set my Unpluq app to block the app basically. And if you want to use it, you have to shake the phone or scroll down or do kind of a riddle or do something in order to get access to it.
yeah,
So when you and I originally spoke in the preparation for this interview, I thought like, does the barrier really help, or does it basically people then just become like a monkey and shake the phone because the desire is so strong? So what's your experience in your testing? Because I personally originally felt like you have to change the behavior, and that comes to awareness. And but you said yes, but we need to implement something that gives you the moment of like, hey, why am I doing this? What is my
yeah,
intention right now?
yeah. Yeah, I love this question. And on one hand, awareness is super important, right? It really starts with that. The way I see it, the people that start to use Unplug already have created that awareness, because they're aware in themselves that they want to
Yep.
change something about their screen time. Then in order to actually make that change, Unplug is a tool that just pushes you in the right direction, right? Um, I see it in a way where all these social media apps, they have been meticulously designed to keep you scrolling for so long, to get you hooked. So we need to also design tools to help you to focus. And in a way, I see Unplug could be seen as a tool that creates a better digital work environment without clutter and distractions for you. And you just have to open the door, which is the barrier, to go to the different room where your distractions are, right? You in the physical world, you also try to set up your physical surrounding up for success. And I think we need to do the same in the digital world, where we create this barrier, because our mind is like too easy to be tricked if it's too easy to access those yeah those
Like with
distractions.
the chocolate or cookie jar, right? If the cookies are
Yeah,
sitting on the
yeah,
countertop, it's just continuously eat it. Like I think that's a good explanation. Then the mind there's no limitation to the mind. Like in a physical room, you have to walk somewhere. You're too lazy to go downstairs and get the cookies or whatever. And in this case, the mind can just switch in an instant and multitask and go from multiple things and actually could try to consume multiple things. I like that. That's a really good explanation. So
Yeah.
okay, so what's the results? What were your initial results, and what's the initial feedback that you received from users by launching this?
Yeah, so we've helped a lot of people really become more mindful and change the way they use their phone. On average, with our latest calculations, we're saving people more than 78 minutes of screen time every day. So that's more than 1 hour. If you calculate it in a year, that's 35 waking days that you get back when you start to use Unplug, that you can spend on things that are more meaningful to you. But I've heard users emailing me that they dropped their usage from 10 to 4 or from 10 to 5 hours even. So people are super excited about it, and the physical aspect of the Unplug tag really helps a lot of people to create a big enough barrier. Some people put the tag in their car, for example, or they leave it in a different room, or they leave it at work when they go to their house, or the other way around. So the feedback is really great, and people love this physical aspect that it has. And the software barriers that we introduce also help people to just create that mindful moment. We hear from a lot of people that they've tried a lot of different solutions, completely blocking it, putting their phone in a box, but those are all like too extreme solutions, and people do want to have some certain level of control of their phone. So with Unplug, we really try to create that balance where the user does have control ultimately, but we just push you a bit in the right direction.
Okay. So it sounds like really that split second creates this awareness. They know we have that barrier installed, and then you pick it up and you're like, oh, what am I doing, right? So basically it creates this moment of reflection to ask yourself if you really need to go on Facebook or whatever you use. I mean, I think Facebook is old now, so I'm older, so never thought I would say that, but I guess TikTok and everything else is like much more exciting to most of the people out there. So it creates that awareness. So let me ask you, how is it different? How is Unplug and the tag, which is basically an additional barrier, right? So if you put the tag towards your phone, then you unlock it. You unlock the app or whatever. How is it different from screen time that's built into iOS, and how is it different from digital Wellbeing app built into Android? So can you maybe explain the difference between the two, or how do they complement each other? You could also say that.
Yeah, so obviously when I started to use to look into this problem, I tried the original solutions that were available on the iPhone and on Android itself. And what we noticed there is that these apps do allow you to in some way block distracting apps, right, after a certain time frame, but it's too easy to just say I want access anyway, or give me 15 minutes more. and they don't really help you to change your habits in a lasting way. And by really introducing this moment of intentional friction, we help people to change their digital habits in a more lasting way. And the fact that it's also so customizable, because the user can create this level of this barrier change in difficulty to make it easier or more difficult. They can change the different barriers. So in that way, it's super personalizable, which helps it to suit to your exact needs. And all that functionality isn't available in the free in the default solutions. And of course, the physical tag is something that's even more unique, where it's an actual physical action that you need to perform.
And I mean, I like about screen time, you see actually how much time you spend, even though I think the app is not very accurate, and how many times you pick it up. But beyond that, I think it's also quite difficult to configure in my experience. So trying to explain it to someone, this is, I like the modes, the focus mode or whatever. I think that's pretty helpful. But I think from what I've seen from Unpluq, it's way more sophisticated and much more behavioral change inducing, for lack of better term.
Yeah, correct.
So what do you think about more radical approaches like the light phone? We've seen like those dumb phones, or the light phone, I think, has some kind of a following where you just have like text messaging and maybe maps and some music on it. I've tinkered around with those too, and I'm coming from a technology background. I'm a digital business consultant, and I helped a lot of large brands and also medium-sized brands to build that digital presence in business. And I like innovation, I like technology, right? But giving it all away because there's so many useful things we have was for me always like, and I need two phones, and I understand the problem about it. But what are your thoughts on really going dumb phone or light phone or whatever is out there?
Yeah, good question. Again, like when we started Unpluq, we really also took a look at dumb phones as an option. But for me personally, this also wouldn't work, because I did find that there were a lot of useful things on my smartphone that I wanted to use, like a good camera, like Spotify, or like my calendar or note-taking app. Or recorder. There's enough to name for anyone. And what we really try to do with Unpluq is give you the possibility to turn your smartphone basically into a dumb phone for a certain time, right? In a certain time period. So I do think they're a great option to be available for the consumers, and I think they're doing a really great job at Lightphone. I think just for a lot of people, the step towards that is a bit too radical, because our smartphones do also provide us with a lot of useful functionality, and for a lot of people, it's just hard to see a life without it. But then again, we were able to do that when they didn't exist yet. So it's kind of a paradox, or
I think it's really a conscious, intentional usage, because I think in a broad spectrum, the smartphones help us to create a more free lifestyle. You can travel anywhere, and you can do your business from basically anywhere in the world with that device. At the same time, it's always like, it's the greatest thing, and it's also the worst thing for you. And I think the awareness around it is really what is important. So I think I agree with you on that. Do you see any responsibility or actions from schools and businesses and governments to help and support these kinds of initiatives that you guys are doing? Because I heard something in Utah here, a state in the US, that they're helping, or they're working on some legislation for schools and the way people and kids can use social media, even though I don't like government interference and things like that. But I'm just curious if you have any experience with schools or like with businesses, because of course productivity gets lost, right? And kids are distracted, and the quality of their learning goes down. So I thought that would be a great avenue for your product too.
Yeah, definitely. So we are always interested to learn more about any companies or schools that are interested to improve their productivity or general well-being for kids or employees. We're planning to start a pilot with a school where we'll give Unpluq tags to the children, um, or teenagers. I think they're high school students actually. So they will start to use it and we'll start to see if it improves their grades, and also if it helps them to better focus, or if it impacts their general well-being. So we're definitely exploring that avenue as well. And yeah, I think it's a super important topic. And in schools, a lot of schools have different systems for this, and in there it also really gets more of a problem that politics is taking into account. And I think that's a good thing, because in some way it is important that this technology does get regulated, in some sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think also it's in mental health industry, like in the it's also gaining more awareness. I'm talking to some lady that has really done a lot of work with kids and coming from pediatrics, and I think there's definitely some initiative there, because we really see that the kids are physically affected, the ADHD rates are going up, and people
Yeah,
think, oh, physiological, but we have to see how much computer games do they play, how much time do they spend on the phone. And talk to some
true.
of my friends, they have like teenagers like between 12 and 15, 16, and they cannot have a conversation in front of the dinner table. They are spending their time on the phone and they're gone. I mean, for me, log into yourself, I call it the mind is gone. You're gone. You're somewhere else. You're not inside yourself.
Yeah.
And the impacts of that on health and happiness is huge that we're not aware of yet, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, what are your future concerns? How do you think how digital well-being will evolve, specifically with the powerful AI that you mentioned before? What are you thinking? I mean, what's your take?
Yeah, that's a very big question, of course. I don't know exactly where the future will go. I think it's very important that we're being mindful and really take a close look at all the technologies that are being developed, and make sure that uh, well-being of people is taken into account when designing those things. And that certainly hasn't always happened in the past. And but I feel like there are more and more people becoming aware of the fact that technology can also have side effects.
Yeah,
And yeah, if you look at VR and AR, for example, let's say that really grows and takes off, you're even more inside another world and outside of your own body, right?
yeah,
I can't imagine what that will do over the long term if people will spend multiple years, most of their time in a VR world. I think there's quite some movies about this,
of course.
that
Yeah,
like not too bright pictures, but I hope we'll be able to um, still remain human and make sure that we keep the planet alive as well. Like if you're always in a digital world, the planet also starts to matter less. So that's also
yeah.
an interesting correlation that
Very
I
interesting
see
concept. Yeah,
there.
yeah,
And then regarding AI, that's just going so fast that it's super difficult to predict where it will go. Um, on one end, I think it's super exciting, but also their caution is definitely something we need to take into account. I'm really curious about your thoughts about that as well,
yeah. I
actually.
mean, coming from again from a mindfulness meditation experience, I'm very concerned about it. And I think the idea is always the idea of the singularity, that the AI or the human brain merges with the AI or with the machine mind. And I was just reading a latest experiment that Stanford University did, where they simulated a game with like 12 or 15 characters, And it was, that Westworld show. I don't know if you're familiar with that show. That's a US
I've
show.
seen it.
And they
Yeah,
tried a simulation with some kind of rules, and they realized that these AI characters adopted some kind of human behavior of showing compassion, of like picking three people that they communicate more with than others. And I found that very concerning. Although from my experience of meditation and mindfulness, I don't believe that the computer can become sentient, because it's just not an organism like a human being. But I think a lot of people in that industry believe that. And I think the danger in all of this is that our brain and our mind cannot distinguish if it's real or not real. As you know, the power of suggestion, you can imagine anything and make that happen, right? So your mind is so powerful. So if a robot can imitate, or an AI can imitate a human being, your mind believes in the first place, oh, that's real. And I think that's where the danger comes in, And then, of
yeah,
course, like the ill will of like people who want to use that for their own advantages is where the danger comes in. So I think there needs to be a regulation. I think there needs to be a watermarking or tagging that this is AI and this is not a human being you're talking to. But I mean, if there's a way, people will find a way to do that and actually omit that.
yeah. I think you mentioned a really important point there, where it doesn't even matter, right, if the AIs really can become sentient. It's just matters if people will believe it is. And in some sense, people already now start to believe it when they're talking with chatbots, right? There was this famous example a while ago from an ex-Google employee, right?
Yep.
That thought that. And this is exactly indeed the what is shown in Westworld as well, where it's fake in the end. Is it a machine or is it a human? It's not clear anymore, and I think then things start to become quite scary
Challenging.
and challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
But
belief is there's always a human behind programming a computer. I don't know if a computer or an AI can program their own. So the intention, again, goes back to the intention. Can we program an AI to have an intention, to have a motivation? And I don't know if that's possible. I mean, maybe it is. I mean, maybe I don't know enough about it. But
yeah,
it's always one of the mentors that I've been working with always said to me, the AI is only as intelligent as the person who programs it, right? And it actually goes back to the more esoteric. And again, I'm coming from a Buddhist background. There's a big topic in Buddhism since the beginning of history about what is wisdom and what is knowledge, So
yeah,
wisdom is coming from your own life experience, right? To make the right choices, to have intuition. I think intuition is one of the biggest things that we're losing here in this digital battle with the devices. And knowledge, absolutely. The computer can have way more knowledge. It can know everything that the human brain just simply cannot store and process. But when we go talking about wisdom, and I'm working on a video on that, knowledge versus wisdom, when we're talking about wisdom and intuition, I don't think that's possible, because, my intuition sometimes can be as good as, and you probably experienced that too, you notice someone calling before you pick up the phone, right? Oh, this person is calling, this person is texting me. And I don't think that the computer will ever be able to replicate that, unless he knows that this person picked up the phone. But someone like intuitive connection, intuitive wisdom, and inherent wisdom, whatever we call it, I think that's where the human is just different than a machine. And I think we'll stay this way. I mean, I would be surprised, but, never say never, but I couldn't see that.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. It's the wisdom that comes from experience, right? Versus the knowledge that's taught. I myself, I have done like a Vipassana meditation retreat, and there this is also made really apparent the importance of wisdom through experience. And in the end, like, I do think that's a super important distinction that a lot of people are not aware of, or is like also changing because of technology. Because what you are saying, people are always looking at their screens at other people experiencing something, but not actually experiencing it themselves, right?
Exactly. They experience someone else's experience. They're processing what someone else's experience has been, or shared experience has been.
So people are looking at other people making a wood fire, other people making.
That's right.
Carving into wood, instead of actually carving wood and making a fire themselves, which is a totally different experience, and that brings a lot of meaning and wisdom, which is totally lost when you watch it on a TikTok video.
And I think there's one fantastic book out there. His name is Ian McGilchrist. He's one of the biggest brain researchers, and he wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. And he talks about how our current world is basically rationalized. He doesn't really like the left and right brain thinking, but it's really a left brain world where everything is computerized, zeros and ones. The thinking is like that, for and against, black and white, and everything in between gets lost. But that's where the juice is. That's where life happens. Life is not like yes or no. You know what I mean? Life is maybe, life is this and that. And this discussion could become very philosophical, but he talks about it, how even the mind wisdom and the knowledges like those spiritual religions have gotten now, they've been really like how does he say, rationalized. You can, my latest interest was like Psychology Today, the biggest magazine in the US about psychology, talks about you shouldn't trust your intuition. So they rationalized intuition. They said, oh, you cannot trust it because you need to make this rationalization. And I'm like, that makes no sense. Why should we rationalize our intuition? We need to learn to trust and connect to our intuition, So you could see that the computer world is really pushing the human to act like a computer. And I think the opposite is true, So, that could be a different discussion to be had, like the real philosophical meaning of it.
Well, I would love to go into that with you one time.
Yeah,
I feel like last time we talked and now as well, we're finding a lot of interesting points to discuss.
Yeah. Well, I think this was a good starting point, Tim. How can people get your app, get the tag? Maybe you can give a little information about that.
Yeah, sure. So if you're open to try out Unpluq and start to reduce your screen time, you can find us at unpluq.com. It's unpluq.com. And you can find our free app in the Play Store or the App Store as well. And like I said as well earlier, I really think it's super important nowadays to become aware of the fact that this is a problem. And I love what you are doing and spreading awareness about this, and then even connecting it to the inside world and maybe even spirituality. I think that's awesome. So thank you so much for
thank you for joining. I think this is a great initiative. I really love what you guys do. I will put the link to your website and where people can download the app in the bottom of this video. But this is great. I mean, good luck to you guys, and we stay in touch for sure. And all the best.
All right, sounds good. Sasha. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Oh, this was great. I could keep talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's